Be my dad, I won't misbehave. Banished by her stepmother, the alien girl begged a human for a home. Lyra's world had always felt cold. From the moment she could understand words, she knew she was different. Her blue skin, her shimmering golden eyes, and the way she felt out of place even in her own family. It was as though she had never truly belonged. The other children on her planet would mock her for the strange marks that ran across her skin, the ones she had since birth. Her stepmother, a harsh and unforgiving woman, was no better. She treated Lyra with disdain, as if she were a mistake in her life, something to be hidden away. Lyra's father, who was once kind and loving, had disappeared years ago, leaving her in the cruel hands of her stepmother. He had promised to return, but he never did. It was as though he had vanished into thin air, leaving no trace. Lyra couldn't even remember his face, but she often dreamed of him, of a time when things had been better. Her stepmother often told her she was nothing more than a burden, a child who could never meet expectations. "You are nothing like your father," she would say. "He was brave, and you're just an inconvenience, a mistake I never asked for." The harsh words had never stopped, but today it felt different. Lyra had just turned 16, and for some reason her stepmother's cruelty had reached its peak. "I've had enough of you," her stepmother shouted as Lyra sat quietly at the edge of the house. The home was not much to look at, just a small dwelling in the barren outskirts of the city, where no one could see the tears that fell from Lyra's eyes. "You're nothing but a burden to me. I'm sending you away." Lyra's heart sank. She had heard the rumors, the whispers of what happened to those who were cast out. No one wanted to help an alien girl, not in a world so divided between the alien species and humans. She wasn't sure how she would survive in a place where no one cared about her. Her stepmother stood over her, fury in her eyes. "Get out! You're no longer welcome here. Go somewhere else and leave me alone." Lyra's thoughts raced as she slowly stood up, trembling. She couldn't believe what was happening. But where will I go?" Her voice was small and desperate. Her stepmother smirked, showing no sign of pity. "That's your problem now. You'll find a way or you won't. I don't care, just leave." With no choice but to obey, Lyra packed what little she had, just a few clothes and a small trinket from her late father. She had no family left, no friends, and no place to call home. She stepped out into the harsh, cold winds of the planet's surface, unsure of where her path would take her. The landscape was barren, a vast stretch of rocky terrain. There was no one around for miles, just the endless, lifeless horizon. Lyra didn't know where to go. She had no plans, no idea what to do next. She simply walked, her heart heavy with sorrow. Her mind kept drifting to the idea of a family, a place where she could belong. She longed for warmth, for kindness. Days passed, and she wandered, growing weak from hunger and exhaustion. The world around her seemed to grow colder, her isolation deepening. She had learned to survive on her own, but it was never easy. The weight of her stepmother's rejection gnawed at her every day. One evening, as she stumbled through the rocky terrain, she saw something unexpected in the distance. A small settlement, a flicker of light against the dark sky. Her heart skipped a beat. Could it be? Was there someone who might help her? She walked toward it, her steps growing faster with hope. As she approached, she saw humans working on the outskirts of the settlement. They were building something, some kind of structure, their faces tired but determined. Lyra had heard stories about humans, kind people who helped others despite the differences. But she had never been so close to them before. Would they help her? Or would they reject her like everyone else? It was late, and most of the workers had already finished for the day, but there was one man still standing by a pile of metal. He was tall, with short black hair, wearing simple clothes. His hands were covered in dust from the work, but his face looked warm, kind even. Lyra hesitated, unsure whether to approach, but the pull of hope was too strong. She had no other choice. "Excuse me," she called, her voice shaking as she stepped forward. The man looked up, his gaze meeting hers. His eyes widened in surprise at the sight of her. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice low and cautious. Lyra felt a sudden rush of relief at the sound of his kindness. She took a deep breath, her body trembling from exhaustion. I need help," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I have nowhere to go. My stepmother, she banished me. I have no family, no home. Please, can you help me?" The man studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. Lyra felt her heart race. She had never felt so vulnerable. She feared he would turn her away, just like the others. But instead, after what felt like an eternity of silence, he sighed and nodded. "You don't have to be alone," he said, his voice soft but firm. You can stay here for now, I'll help you. Lyra's eyes filled with tears, but she quickly wiped them away. She couldn't believe it. Someone was actually offering her help. She didn't know what she had done to deserve it, but she was grateful beyond words. Thank you, she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. The man gestured for her to follow him. Come on, let's get you inside where it's safe. We'll figure things out. And for the first time in years, Lyra allowed herself to feel hope. Maybe, just maybe, she had found someone who could give her a chance to start over, to build a life where she didn't have to be alone anymore. As she walked beside the man, she didn't know what the future held. But for the first time, she believed that there might be a place for her in this world. Lyra followed the man, whose name was Marcus, as he led her toward the small settlement. The buildings were simple and made of metal and wood, not much different from the structures on her home planet. But there was something about this place that felt different, warmer, safer. She had never felt so uncertain yet so hopeful at the same time. Marcus, walking beside her, was quiet but not unkind. He seemed like a man who had seen a lot but still cared enough to help someone like her. As they walked, Lyra looked around at the humans working on the buildings. They didn't seem to notice her much, their attention focused on their tasks. She felt a strange mix of relief and anxiety. The humans were just like the stories she had heard, focused, hardworking, but at the same time they seemed distant. She had heard that humans weren't always welcoming to outsiders, especially aliens like herself. But Marcus hadn't rejected her. In fact, he had invited her into his life without asking many questions. When they reached Marcus' small cabin, Lyra could hardly believe her eyes. It wasn't grand, not like the houses back on her planet, but it was warm, clean, and smelled faintly of wood and fresh air. There was a simple bed in one corner, a small table with a few chairs, and a small fire burning in a fireplace. Make yourself at home, Marcus said, his voice calm. He set down his tools and went over to a cabinet, pulling out a cup of water. You must be thirsty, Lyra nodded. She hadn't realized how thirsty she was until he handed her the cup. She drank quickly, feeling the cold water rush down her throat. Thank you, she said softly, handing the empty cup back to him. Marcus gave her a small smile. You're welcome, you're safe here, I'll make sure of it. Lyra was unsure how to respond. She wasn't used to people being so kind, especially to someone like her, an alien abandoned by her family. She had spent most of her life trying to hide her true self, afraid of what people might think if they knew who she really was. But here in Marcus' cabin, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time, acceptance. She sat down on the bed, trying to settle her thoughts. I'm sorry, I don't know how to repay you for your kindness. I've never had anyone care about me like this. Marcus looked at her, his expression soft. You don't need to repay me, it's just what anyone would do. No one should be left alone in this world. Lyra felt a lump in her throat. For a moment, she couldn't speak. She had never known what it was like to be cared for, not truly. Her stepmother's cruelty had left deep scars on her heart, and she wasn't sure how to heal them. But Marcus' kindness was a start. She wanted to believe that this was real, that she wasn't dreaming. You're not like other humans, are you? She asked, her voice quiet but filled with curiosity. You're kind, Marcus chuckled softly. I try to be. I don't know if that makes me different, but I believe in helping others when I can. People are complicated, but we all need each other. No one should suffer alone. Lyra nodded, feeling a warmth spread through her chest. She had spent so long hiding from the world, running from her past, but Marcus' words made her want to open up. She had nothing left to lose. I've never had a real family, she said slowly, her voice wavering. My stepmother, she never cared for me. She always told me I wasn't good enough, that I was a mistake. She even sent me away. Marcus' eyes softened, and he took a step closer. I'm sorry you had to go through that. No one deserves to be treated that way. Lyra looked down at her hands, ashamed of the tears she could feel threatening to fall. I've always felt different. I'm not like the other people from my world. I just wanted to belong somewhere, but now I don't even know who I am anymore. Marcus placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, a silent gesture of comfort. You're not alone anymore, Lyra. You don't have to be anyone other than yourself. I'll help you figure things out step by step. For the first time in a long time, Lyra felt a flicker of hope. Maybe she could start over. Maybe she could find a place in this new world with Marcus as her guide. She wasn't sure what her future held, but she knew one thing: she wasn't alone anymore. The days that followed were a blur of new experiences. Marcus taught her how to do simple things that she had never learned back home. He showed her how to cook with the strange ingredients humans used and how to gather food from the forests around their settlement. Every day, they would walk to the nearby market, where Marcus would trade his work for supplies. Lyra would help him, using her alien abilities to carry heavy loads or fix things with ease. At first, the other humans in the settlement seemed wary of Lyra. They didn't know what to make of her. She was from another world, after all. But Marcus' quiet confidence in her began to change their minds. Slowly, they started to accept her as part of their community. One evening, as they sat together around the fire, Marcus looked at Lyra thoughtfully. "I know it's not easy being from another world. But you've got a place here. We'll make it work." Lyra smiled, her heart swelling with gratitude. For the first time in her life, she felt like she was part of something bigger than herself. She had always dreamed of a family, and now, with Marcus, she was starting to believe that dream could come true. But as the days went by, something inside her began to stir. Lyra couldn't shake the feeling that she wasn't safe here, not entirely. Her stepmother, the one who had cast her aside, would never let her go so easily. Lyra could still feel the harsh sting of her words echoing in her mind. Her stepmother had made it clear that she would stop at nothing to bring Lyra back, dead or alive. And that threat still hung over her head. One evening, as Marcus and Lyra were walking back from the market, a group of men on horseback rode up to them. They were strangers, but their clothes and weapons made it clear that they weren't ordinary settlers. Lyra's heart raced as she recognized their uniforms. They were mercenaries hired to find her and bring her back. "Marcus," she whispered urgently, "they're here." Marcus' eyes narrowed. He had seen the look on her face before, fear but also determination. He knew what it meant. "Stay close," he said firmly, his hand tightening on hers. As the mercenaries drew closer, one of them called out to Lyra, "You're coming with us. Your stepmother wants you back." Lyra stood tall, her heart pounding in her chest. "I'm not going back, not to her." The mercenary sneered. "You don't have a choice." Marcus stepped forward, his stance protective. "She's not going anywhere with you. Leave now and you won't get hurt." The tension in the air thickened, but Marcus didn't back down. He was determined to protect her, no matter the cost. Lyra could see it in his eyes. He would fight for her, even if it meant risking everything. As the mercenaries exchanged glances, Lyra felt something stir within her, a surge of power. It was the power of her alien heritage, something she had never fully embraced until now. She wasn't going to let them take her without a fight. With one swift motion, she raised her hand, and a shockwave of energy blasted from her fingertips, sending the mercenaries stumbling back. The men were caught off guard, but Lyra wasn't finished. She felt the power surge through her, and for the first time in her life, she let it flow freely. Marcus looked at her in shock, his mouth slightly open. "Lyra, you did that?" She nodded, breathless. "I didn't know I could, but I will never go back to her. I'm not her prisoner anymore." The mercenaries, now regrouping, realized they weren't prepared for an alien with such power. After a tense pause, they turned and rode off into the distance, leaving Lyra and Marcus standing in the quiet night. Marcus looked at her with awe, his voice filled with respect. "You're not alone, Lyra, not now, not ever." And for the first time, Lyra believed him. The journey ahead would be difficult, but she wasn't afraid anymore. She had found a new family, and she was willing to fight to keep it. After the mercenaries had left, Lyra and Marcus spent the next few days in silence, trying to make sense of what had just happened. The attack had shaken them both. Lyra had used powers she didn't fully understand, and the mercenaries had made it clear that they wouldn't give up easily. They would keep hunting her until they either brought her back to her stepmother or saw her dead. Lyra couldn't shake the fear that lingered in her chest. Her stepmother, with all her power and influence, would never stop searching for her. Lyra had no idea what would happen to her if she was caught again. Would she be punished? Or worse, would her stepmother try to destroy her? Marcus, too, had been affected by the encounter. He was strong, but Lyra could see the worry in his eyes. He had promised to protect her, but even he knew the mercenaries were only the beginning. The real threat was her stepmother, and the lengths she would go to in order to get what she wanted. One evening, as the sun set over the distant hills, Marcus and Lyra sat in front of the small cabin. The air was cool, and the stars were starting to twinkle in the darkening sky. The fire crackled softly between them, but the silence was heavy. "Lyra," Marcus finally spoke, breaking the quiet, "you know we can't keep running. If they're coming after you, we need to make a plan." Lyra nodded, feeling a cold knot in her stomach. "I know, but I don't know what to do if I go back. I'm not sure what will happen to me." I've seen how cruel she can be, and if I stay here, they'll keep coming after you. I don't want to put you in danger." Marcus shifted, looking out into the dark. "You're not alone in this. I won't let them take you, but we can't just hide forever. We need to find a way to stop this." Lyra looked up at him, her heart heavy with gratitude. Marcus had become the closest thing to family she had ever known. In a world that had shown her nothing but rejection, his kindness was a light in the darkness. But she couldn't let him get hurt because of her. "I don't know if there is a way to stop her," Lyra said softly, her voice trembling. "She's powerful, and I'm just me. I don't have anything to fight back with." "You have more than you think," Marcus replied, his voice firm. "You have me, and we can figure this out together." Lyra turned her gaze to the fire, lost in thought. She had spent so many years running from her past, hiding who she was, but now she realized that she couldn't keep hiding forever. Her stepmother would come for her, no matter how far she ran, and if Marcus was going to help her, she needed to face her past head-on. The next day, Marcus and Lyra went into the settlement to gather more supplies. They kept their heads low, avoiding any attention. Lyra had learned how to blend in, how to keep her alien features hidden from others. She kept her head down and walked beside Marcus, who moved with purpose through the crowded market. While Marcus bartered for food, Lyra couldn't help but overhear snippets of conversation around her. People were talking about the strange group of mercenaries that had appeared recently. They had been causing trouble in the settlement, looking for someone. Lyra's heart skipped a beat. The mercenaries had been here, searching for her, and now they were getting closer. The thought of facing them again terrified her. She had only just discovered the extent of her own powers, and she wasn't sure she was ready to face the full force of her stepmother's wrath. Later that evening, after they had returned to the cabin, Marcus turned to Lyra with a serious look on his face. "I spoke to some of the people in the settlement. The mercenaries are working for someone powerful. They've been offering large sums of money for information on you." Lyra felt a chill run down her spine. "Who?" Marcus shook his head. "I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out. We can't afford to wait. If they're willing to pay that much, it means they'll stop at nothing to find you." Lyra's hands clenched into fists. She hated feeling so powerless. She hated that someone was willing to pay for her capture, as if she were just a prize to be won. But the worst part was knowing that it was her stepmother who was behind all of it. She could feel her heart pounding in her chest. How much longer could she hide from her? "You need to leave," Lyra said, her voice shaky. "You don't deserve to be dragged into this. If they find you, it will be because of me. You shouldn't have to risk your life for me." Marcus reached out and placed a hand on her shoulder. "I'm not going anywhere. I promised I would help you, and I meant it. We're in this together." Lyra looked at him, her eyes filling with tears. For the first time in her life, she felt truly cared for. Marcus wasn't just offering her protection. He was offering her something far more valuable, a chance to belong, a chance to have a family. But she couldn't let him risk everything for her. "I don't want you to get hurt because of me," Lyra whispered. "I don't want to drag you into my fight. You've already done so much for me. I don't know what to do anymore." Marcus smiled at her, his expression warm and sincere. "The only fight I'm in is to keep you safe. We'll find a way to stop this, but you need to trust me. You need to believe that you're not alone in this." Lyra swallowed hard. It was hard to believe that someone could care for her this much. She had spent so many years feeling like an outsider, rejected and alone, but Marcus had shown her a different way. He had shown her what it was like to be truly seen, to be accepted for who she was. "I trust you," she said quietly, her voice filled with emotion. "I trust you more than I've trusted anyone." The next morning, Marcus gathered his things and told Lyra they were going to meet with a few contacts. They had to get information about who was behind the mercenaries, and Marcus had connections in the settlement that could help. Lyra wanted to stay behind, to hide from the world, but she knew that she couldn't keep running. She had to face what was coming. As they left the cabin, Lyra couldn't shake the feeling that things were getting worse. The mercenaries were getting closer, and her stepmother's influence was spreading. But she also knew that she couldn't do this alone. Marcus had become her rock, the one person who had given her the courage to face her past. The day passed quickly, filled with meetings and exchanges of information. Lyra had learned more about her stepmother's grip on the galaxy and the true extent of the power she held. She had never realized how dangerous her stepmother could be until now. But through it all, Marcus stayed by her side. They were a team, fighting for the same thing: freedom, peace, and a future where they could both live without fear. Lyra had no idea what would happen next, but she knew one thing for sure: she wouldn't face it alone. As the sun began to set, Lyra and Marcus returned to the cabin, their minds filled with plans and strategies. They still had a long way to go before they could stop the mercenaries and her stepmother, but for the first time in a long while, Lyra felt a glimmer of hope. She wasn't running anymore. She was ready to fight for the life she deserved. The next few days felt like a blur for Lyra. The quiet of the cabin, the warmth of Marcus' presence, and the simple routine of their days had been comforting, but the looming danger hung over her like a shadow. Every step she took outside, every conversation she had, seemed to remind her that her past was not far behind. The mercenaries had been just the beginning. Her stepmother's reach was vast, and Lyra knew that no matter how far she ran, her past would always catch up with her. The tension had been building in Marcus' small cabin for days now. Every time the door opened, Lyra would flinch, her heart racing. What if the mercenaries were out there? What if they were closing in on them? The quiet sounds of the settlement, the rustling of the wind outside, all seemed to hide the ever-present danger. Lyra had never felt so torn before. She was grateful for Marcus' kindness and the safety he had offered her, but she couldn't shake the feeling that they couldn't hide forever. One evening, as the last rays of sunlight disappeared behind the horizon, Lyra stood by the window of the cabin, staring out at the distant hills. The stars were starting to appear in the sky, one by one, and the world outside seemed peaceful. But inside, Lyra's mind was in turmoil. She could feel the weight of the decision she had to make pressing down on her chest. Marcus entered the room quietly, his boots making soft sounds on the wooden floor. He didn't say anything at first, just stood beside her and looked out at the same stars. "Marcus," Lyra began, her voice soft but filled with uncertainty, "I can't keep you in danger. You've done so much for me already. I can't let you risk your life for me any longer." Marcus didn't turn to her right away, his gaze still fixed on the stars. "Lyra, you don't have to apologize for anything. I made my choice when I decided to help you." She shook her head, her hand gripping the edge of the window frame. "You don't understand. They'll keep coming. They won't stop. I'll never be safe here, and neither will you. I'm a danger to you, my stepmother. She'll send more mercenaries. She'll never let me go, and I don't want you to be hurt because of me." Marcus finally turned to face her, his eyes soft but filled with determination. "I'm not afraid of her, and I'm not afraid of what might happen to me. I'm afraid of losing you. I'm afraid of what'll happen if you leave." Lyra's heart twisted at his words. She had never felt so conflicted in her life. Every part of her wanted to stay, to build a life here with Marcus, away from the dangers of her past. But the fear of bringing more danger to him, of dragging him deeper into her world, was too much to bear. "You don't understand," she whispered. "If I stay, I'll always be running. I'll always be looking over my shoulder, waiting for the next threat to come. I don't want that for you, Marcus. I can't keep putting you in danger." Marcus stepped forward, closing the distance between them. His hand reached out to gently touch her shoulder. "Lyra, I've made my choice. I'm not going anywhere, and neither are you. We'll figure this out together. We'll face whatever comes our way. But I won't let you leave, not without a fight." Lyra took a shaky breath, her emotions threatening to overwhelm her. She had never felt so torn between what she wanted and what she thought was right. Her mind kept returning to the same question. Was it selfish to stay with Marcus? Would she be putting him in too much danger by holding on to him? Or was there another way, a way for them both to fight for a future despite everything? "I can't ask you to stay here with me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I can't let you risk your life because of me." Marcus sighed, a long, tired sound. "You don't have to ask. You're not asking me to do anything. I'm choosing this, Lyra. I'm choosing to be here with you. I'm choosing to protect you, to stand by your side. If that means facing your past and whatever comes with it, then I'll do it. But you're not alone in this." Lyra's eyes filled with tears. She had never felt this kind of love, this kind of acceptance in her entire life. It was more than she had ever dreamed of, and yet she couldn't help but feel like she was pushing Marcus into something he couldn't handle. "I don't want to lose you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Marcus reached out and pulled her into a gentle hug, holding her close. "You won't lose me. I'm not going anywhere." Lyra let herself relax into his embrace, taking comfort in the warmth of his arms around her. For the first time in weeks, the constant knot of fear in her stomach loosened. Maybe Marcus was right. Maybe they could face this together. Maybe they could stand against the dangers that were closing in on them, no matter how powerful her stepmother was. The decision had never been easy. But standing there in Marcus' arms, Lyra realized that she didn't want to run anymore. She didn't want to live her life in fear, constantly hiding from her past. She wanted to fight for a future, one where she wasn't just a fugitive, but a person who mattered. The next day, they made their plans. They couldn't stay hidden forever, and Lyra knew that the mercenaries would come again. But this time, they wouldn't run. They would fight. Marcus had connections in the settlement, people he trusted, and he knew that they could use those connections to gather information. They needed to know exactly who was behind the mercenaries, who was pulling the strings and sending them after Lyra. With that knowledge, they could make a plan, find a way to stop the threat once and for all. For the first time in a long while, Lyra felt a sense of purpose. She wasn't running. She wasn't hiding. She was standing up, fighting for the life she wanted, and with Marcus by her side, she knew she could face whatever came next. That night, as they sat by the fire, Lyra felt the weight of the decision settle in her chest. There was no turning back now. She had made her choice and Marcus had made his. They were in this together, and whatever happened next, they would face it side by side. The road ahead would not be easy. Lyra knew that, but for the first time in her life, she wasn't afraid. She had found a family, a place where she belonged, and with Marcus at her side, she would fight for that family no matter the cost. The mercenaries would come again, but this time Lyra was ready. She wasn't running. She wasn't hiding. She was ready to face her past and her future, whatever it took. The night was still, the only sound the crackling of the fire in the hearth. The dim light flickered across the cabin, casting long shadows on the walls. Lyra sat beside Marcus, the warmth of the fire comforting her, yet her mind was elsewhere. The weight of what they were about to do pressed on her, but for the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of clarity. She wasn't running anymore. She wasn't hiding from her past or the mercenaries that her stepmother had sent after her. She had made a choice, and Marcus had made his. They were in this together. Tomorrow, they would take the next step. It was time to stop being afraid. Over the past few days, Marcus had been working on gathering information. He talked to a few of his trusted contacts in the settlement, people who knew the mercenaries and the power behind them. They had learned that Lyra's stepmother wasn't just some random figure in the galaxy. She was a powerful leader, one whose influence stretched far beyond their small settlement. She controlled many worlds, and her wealth and resources were vast. If anyone had the ability to find Lyra and send an army after her, it was her. But Marcus and Lyra were determined to stop her. They had come up with a plan. The mercenaries would not just keep coming for her forever. They had a chance to make things right, to stop the endless cycle of fear and running. "We have to face her," Lyra said quietly, breaking the silence between them. She didn't need to explain who her was. They both knew. "I don't know how, but I can't keep hiding forever. We've done all we can to prepare, but the only way to end this is to confront her. We need to show her that I'm not afraid anymore." Marcus looked at her, his expression soft yet resolute. "You don't have to do this alone, Lyra. I'm with you every step of the way. We'll figure it out together." She nodded, grateful for his unwavering support. She knew she wasn't alone in this fight anymore. For so long, she had been fighting against the world, believing she had to face it all on her own. But now, with Marcus beside her, the weight of it didn't seem so heavy. It didn't seem as impossible. The morning light broke through the cracks of the cabin, casting a warm glow across the room. Lyra stood up and stretched, her muscles sore from the long hours they had spent preparing. Today was the day they would take action. They made their way through the settlement, the usual quiet of the area now filled with a sense of urgency. Lyra's heart beat fast in her chest. She was ready to face her past, ready to stop running. The information Marcus had gathered pointed to the mercenaries' headquarters, an old, abandoned compound outside the settlement. The place was well hidden, a fortress of sorts, and it was there they would find answers. It was there they would make their stand. As they approached the compound, the feeling of unease grew stronger. Lyra could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on her. This was no longer just about survival. It was about reclaiming her future, taking control of her destiny. They stood outside the compound, hidden in the shadows, watching for any sign of movement. The compound was heavily guarded, and Lyra knew it wouldn't be easy to get inside. But she also knew that if they didn't act now, they would lose their chance. "I don't know how many are in there," Marcus said, his voice low and tense, But we'll have to move fast. We can't let them see us coming. Lyra nodded, her nerves steadying. I can handle it. Just get us in there. Together, they moved toward the compound, slipping through the narrow gaps between the buildings. Every sound seemed amplified in the quiet morning, and Lyra's senses were on high alert. She could feel the power inside her, the strength that had always been there, waiting to be unleashed. She had never used it fully, but today, she knew that if she wanted to protect herself and those she loved, she had to. They reached the outer wall of the compound, and Marcus quickly pulled out a set of tools. This should be quick, he said. He worked with practiced hands, unlocking a door that led into the inner area of the compound. Once the door was open, they stepped inside, the cold, metallic walls of the compound surrounding them. The air smelled stale, and the only sound was their footsteps echoing on the hard floor. Lyra's heart pounded as they moved deeper into the building, her mind racing. She didn't know what they would find inside, but she had made up her mind. There was no turning back now. They crept down the dark hallways, avoiding guards and staying out of sight. Lyra could feel the weight of her stepmother's presence even in this cold, distant place. She was here somewhere, waiting for her. Finally, they reached a large chamber. The door was guarded by two mercenaries, but they were distracted, arguing over something Lyra couldn't hear. Without a word, Marcus signaled to Lyra, and together they moved swiftly. Lyra used her powers, sending a wave of energy that knocked the mercenaries off their feet, leaving them unconscious on the floor. They pushed open the door, and inside they found what they were looking for. The room was filled with monitors and communications equipment. But at the center of the room stood a figure Lyra knew all too well, her stepmother. You, Lyra said, her voice cold and steady, you've been hunting me like a dog. Her stepmother turned slowly, her eyes narrowing. So you've come to face me after all, she said, her voice dripping with disdain. I knew you couldn't hide forever. You're weak, Lyra, always have been. Lyra felt the anger rise in her chest, but she kept her voice even. I'm not weak anymore, and I'm not your prisoner. Her stepmother sneered. You think you can stop me? You're nothing but a mistake, a burden. I should have killed you when I had the chance. The words stung, but Lyra refused to let them show. She stepped forward, standing tall. You're wrong. I'm not your mistake. I'm my own person, and I'm done running. I won't be your tool anymore. With that, she raised her hand, focusing all her energy into a single blast. Her stepmother tried to defend herself, but Lyra's power was too much. The force of the blast sent her stepmother flying back, slamming into the wall. Marcus stepped forward, his hand on Lyra's shoulder. It's over. You don't have to do this anymore. Lyra looked down at her stepmother, who was now unconscious on the floor. She felt no joy in what she had done, but she knew it was necessary. It was the end of one chapter of her life and the beginning of another. With the mercenaries defeated and her stepmother no longer a threat, Lyra felt a weight lift off her shoulders. The fear that had followed her for so long was gone. She was free. Later that night, Marcus and Lyra stood outside the compound, watching as the sun set over the horizon. The world was still, and for the first time in a long time, Lyra felt at peace. You did it, Marcus said, his voice filled with pride. Lyra smiled. We did it together. They stood there for a moment, the silence between them comfortable. Lyra knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be challenges, new threats, and things they couldn't predict. But for the first time, she didn't feel alone. She didn't feel afraid. She had found a family, a place where she belonged. And with Marcus by her side, she knew that whatever came next, they would face it together.